Thank you, Gavin, and thanks everybody. We realise the time is pressing, so we are going to be brief in the few things we're going to say. It's a great pleasure to be here at the end of a project that started back in 2017, and thanks to the State Library for your contribution and your support, making it possible all the way along. I'll start by acknowledging the traditional owners and also acknowledging the traditional custodians of various parts of the state who contributed to our project in different ways, and I'll come back to those in a minute. But essentially, I'm here to reflect on our project and introduce you to it, and also along the way say thank you to a few people who are obviously key in the success of the project. It's now finished and completed, and we can present to you and unveil the completed Queensland Atlas of Religion. As I say, it started the way all best projects do, and that is over a beer at a pub, where Adam and I and a few other colleagues at the University of Queensland cooked up an idea which has turned into a 6-year odyssey. So when you see the photographs of us later on, you'll see the toll that it has taken. We're much younger when this project started. So we begin with the idea behind the project that we really wanted to capture something distinctive about the Queensland story. We wanted to capture the diversity of Queensland in terms of its various religious faith traditions and faith communities. Now that's a delicate subject for some. It's sometimes a politically charged subject. State Library, when we first talked about it, they thought, well, how about you do spirituality? Isn't religion a bit too hard-edged? And we said, well, that's the point. We're opening it up for discussion because religion is an important element in the social fabric. It's an important element in cultural expression and cultural interpretation, and it's an important piece of the puzzle that holds communities together and that make them distinctive. So for us as academics, as researchers, it's important to address this head-on as a feature in the Queensland setting, something that has been in the Queensland setting since the outset and before of the origins of the state of Queensland. So for us, we wanted to understand on the broadest canvas possible the role that Queensland's religious communities, religious traditions and religious practices had made. And so in doing this, there's some summary points there about what we set out to do. We wanted to capture a sense of religious diversity, and we wanted to produce a resource that could contribute to religious literacy. In other words, people understanding different faith traditions more explicitly in their own terms, and also understanding the contribution that those faith traditions have made and continue to make to the social fabric and the cultural landscape of Queensland today. And very quickly, the project came out of 2 or 3, in fact 4 or 5 earlier projects that were pioneered by Peter Spirit at the University of Queensland and together with Marianne Stell, who's in the audience today, and other colleagues. Those very successful digital humanities websites were developed between 2007 and 2015. So our project was modelled on those earlier ones and used them as a template, if you like, and so it helped us to persuade the Australian Research Council and other funders to assist. There's the images I referred to before. Neither of us are bearded, and both of us have a twinkle in our eye. Along with other members of the project, you can see how many people came together in that initial application. And as I say, the support of Gavin and other staff at the State Library, particularly Catherine Cottle, Christy Theodosiou, and more recently Troy Keefe, Megan Bull and others, has been fantastic in getting this project over the line. Along the way, we've developed relationships with contributors across the state. Adam will talk a bit more about the contents of the site in a moment, but also our religious communities across the state who came on board with our community reference group very early on. So we had a series of workshops in 2018 in Gladstone, in Townsville, in Toowoomba, in Logan and in Brisbane, and then that's laid the foundations for subsequent work across the state. I'll hand over to Adam because my kind of overview of the project can be drawn to a close. Adam will talk us through the elements of the project as you see them in our website, which is now live and available to the world. If you simply search for Queensland Religion, you'll come to the website, or Queensland Atlas of Religion to give it its full title. But I'll hand over to Adam now.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, so maybe if I might start, we had different types of entries in the Atlas. We've got about 40 there at the moment, and we're going to keep expanding on it. But I'll just start a bit to talk maybe a little bit more about the how and the why. Jeff's a historian who works a bit on religion, and I'm a religious studies scholar who works a bit on history. And in fact, a lot of my other research is really on Sanskrit texts. I work on very old things that come from South Asia, and a lot of my time I go to South Asia and that sort of research. So this is actually quite a different style of project for what a lot of my research is. But part of it was a bit motivated by, recognising that the things I study in other parts of the world are actually present in Queensland, and have been in many cases for a long time. We've already heard about some East Asian communities that have been here since the gold rush. South Asian communities have been in Queensland since the mid to late 19th century, and all of those communities have left their marks on the landscape, but they're also, in many respects, communities have had to struggle through significant structural impositions to create thriving communities, which is really mostly what we see today. So it's a little bit trying to tell that story through religious communities. The objective, one of them, as Jeff already mentioned, was religious literacy. That was very strongly motivated by when we were coming to this project. There was a particular politician in Queensland who I'm not going to mention his name, I'm not going to mention who, was expressing a lot of phobia about a particular religious group. That person, who was a politician and a representative of Queensland, therefore, had no idea, had been here and had been a significant presence in Queensland for well over 100 years. So in some ways we're trying to think, well, how do you connect a public to good quality information about these kinds of things? And so that was kind of the responsibility that we took on. That is why it's a website, because our objective is to communicate to a wider audience, to have this information presented in a more accessible way. Having said that, we're also academics, so we write essays a lot of the time, and the Atlas itself is divided up into 3 or 4 different types of entries. Oh, one other thing I'll just say too about the how and the why is that what we didn't really want to do is a kind of a bottom-up explanation of religious doctrine and history, and then you arrive at the representatives, apparently, of these things who are meant to just manifest those doctrines in some sort of authentic way in the present context. That's not really what we're about. What we wanted to do is talk about communities and then explain, when it was relevant or pertinent, things about doctrine or terminology, things like Joss House. Where's the word Joss House come from? Well, because it's not a Chinese word, it's used for Chinese temples. It actually is it comes ultimately from the Portuguese word for God, and it was really what we'd call a kind of exonymic way of referring to Chinese temples. It's not what Chinese people refer to these places. It also misrepresents a bit what goes on inside them, because they're not worshipping a god in the sense that Joss House would indicate in that way. So, we do want to have that kind of information in there, but we wanted to present it in a kind of digestible way. So, in the first style of content, we've got our essays. They tend to be around 4,000 words. One of the principles on designing the content or producing the content was that it had to reflect diversity. That was one of the most important criteria. And so you can see this is just some sample entries. You'll see it covers quite a range of entries. I'll just note, by the way, that the second bottom one there on the regional Chinese temples, written by Gordon Grimwade, that actually refers to the 2 Ravenswood Chinese temples that have existed in the past. They're not there anymore. Of the many temples that were in Queensland, there's only one active one left that's in Innisfail, and there's also the one still in. There's 2 others that are kind of more museum sites. One in Brisbane and one up at Atherton. Yeah. And Gordon Grimwade is the community. What's the right term, Jeff? It's the heritage archaeologist. Is that right? Who's been the specialist working on those sites. And I don't know if you've met him, but he'd be the person to talk about Ravenswood with, perhaps, as well. Sorry, I was looking for you first. Oh, you have? Great. Yeah. We can connect you to some of these people too, if it helps ever. All right, now, so these are kind of some of the essay entries, and we also do oral history interviews. We also collaborated with Catherine Cottle on those interviews. Some of these are already up on the website. Ross Parisi, who's in the room, isn't quite yet up on the website, but you will be soon, Ross. Thanks for coming down all the way from Cairns. These tend to be in the form that they put on the website, about half an hour long. The full form is an hour and 20 minutes. The full interviews usually around an hour and 20, and they're deposited in the State Library collection. There's some samples of some we have in process. Most of those are actually up on the website. Includes quite a lot of Indigenous stories as well. You know, mostly it's us been producing those oral history interviews. We have a number planned for the future as well. We have also Welcomes to Country. We have 3 of those up on the website, and we have others in development, and we want those to reflect again the diversity of the Queensland story when it comes to Indigenous populations. This is actually Steve Kemp from Wirrabinda, which is south of Rockhampton, which we went to a couple of years ago. Now, what I might just do then is jump to the website. That, if you have your phone, because the website can be viewed on a normal computer, can be viewed on an iPad or some sort of tablet device. It also can be viewed on your phone. If you go to your phone, it looks a little bit different because it's a vertical format, and so it had to be redesigned for those purposes. But you can go in and start having a look. I'm a bit concerned about time. We're going to do a little quick look in the website now, but Gav, I'm looking for permission, or should we... You've got 2 minutes. 2 minutes, all right. If you want to, Erin, if you don't mind just clicking on the slide. So this is what it looks like as a web page. It's been live now since November, December, somewhere around there. You can see we had a principle of organisation around some themes. Whoops, we moved. Place, tradition, story and action. Most stories will appear under more than one of those themes. If you scroll down a little bit, Erin, you'll see we also have a carousel where you can access some of the stories. The most recent one goes first. In fact, if that first one was about the Kurubi Mosque in Brisbane, which was the first... this is a very sad story. It's a sad story about Queensland and Australia. It's the first mosque in the world that was attacked after 9/11, and it was firebombed. So it was a story about what the community did in response to that. All right, so you get a bit of a sense of what to do. I know we're all hungry, so we might... we're actually going upstairs to level 4, and we have some food up there. There's a slide for it. Oh, sorry, go into the next slide, Erin, and well, I actually have to go back to that, don't I? Hang on. I can't click anything on the website. Oh, so something about the future, actually. That's what I'll say first. Next slide, yes. Who was controlling that? I was controlling that. Okay, so we've got further entries underway. We actually plan to keep adding stories to the site for maybe the next 10 years, whilst we still have jobs, Lisa. So we have some things, in fact, in place we're going to do for the rest of this year. Our funding actually cuts off at the end of this year, and we'll have 2 publication rounds every year as well, in the middle and at the end. We also have a social media handle. Some of these stories have been converted into much shorter vertical stories, particularly for people who use Instagram. That's the handle there if you're interested in following that. And you know, that was a bit of an experiment in how you tell a story in a different format. They were produced by Jess White, who also contributed, was the administrator for 3 years on the project, or 4 years on the project, and produced one of the stories as well about the Hindu temple down at South Maclean. At the end, some time in the future, maybe 10 years, we will probably stop adding things to the site, and we plan to produce also a book of what we regard to be the kind of most striking stories. So that is the Queensland Atlas of Religion, and if you're happy to join us up on level 4, then we can show you a little bit more, because we'll have some tablets available and so on. That's in that room. Thank you.